Coalition, reading our keynote speaker's bio. Our keynote speaker will start the presentation, and finally we will have Q&A. So I would like to call Carolyn to go over Southeast Minnesota Park RX, and then Megan will read our keynote speaker's bio for us. Carolyn.
Thank you, Muse. So my name is Carlin Ziegler. I'm the Olmsted County Parks Director. Just one of the kind of key people that kind of started really trying to implement the system along with Sarah from DNR, Ben from Rochester City Parks. And then we started trying to pull in some different organizations such as the Mayo Clinic and our public health departments to really start trying to get some footing to what we call this parks prescription effort. And we kind of honed it down into just our little niche of the world here. And just, it's a Southeast Minnesota Parks RX. And we are just a smaller kind of subnote of the larger Parks RX America, which has a nice big website, robust information, and the tools that can be used by people to start writing prescriptions to the parks. Since we've started with Parks RX America, they've shifted just a little bit, and are trying to get people to write their own prescriptions just as much as we're trying to get providers and educators and physicians to start writing prescriptions to the parks as well. We, as in the parks departments, know how beneficial the parks are to people. We've been trying to push that for quite a long time, and this is just kind of that extra medical step that kind of helps really tell the story of how beneficial the outdoors can be to people. And so we want to keep working amongst the group to really start fostering that relationship between mental health, physical health, and the outdoors. And so that's really what this whole group and organization is about. And so we really want to just keep reaching out as far as we can to help people and use our parks close by to do that. So hopefully I kind of explained all that well enough. If you have any more questions about Parks RX itself, please feel free to ask more questions of myself or anyone else on the team on the call. So with that, I am going to hand this back to Muse to follow along, make sure I'm not going outside of the agenda. So thank you, Muse.
Oh, thank you very much. Megan, can you please read our keynote speaker's bio?
Yes. Jan Wellik is the founder and director of Eco Expressions, LLC, an education program founded in San Diego, California in 2004 to help people discover their inner spirit and passion through outdoor exploration in nature. Jan currently lives in La Crosse, Wisconsin area, where she continues her work through Eco Expressions while also instructing courses on nature and environmental writing and environmental education at UW La Crosse. Through her offerings, Jan introduces students to mindful nature experiences and helps them grow their personal relationships with the natural world. Her work with young adults offers many examples for college campuses and mental health providers looking to incorporate nature-based experiences into their offerings. And with that, we'll hand it over to you, Dr. Wellik.
Thank you, Megan. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. I'm going to try pulling up my little PowerPoint here. Are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes, that's
okay.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Whoops. So you'll see that I tweaked the title a little bit from just nature as a healing tool to really specifically what my background is of nature art as a healing tool. So I hope that's okay. And here's just a little overview of some of the things I'll cover here. A little background about Eco Expressions, which ties in nature journaling, expressive arts, healing spaces. I'll talk more about that, and a little about forest bathing. So Eco Expressions, I did start back in 2004 in San Diego, and then we moved here to Wisconsin in 2009. So it's been here ever since, and it kind of morphed. In San Diego, I had grants to work with school districts more often. I would do like an after-school program, and I worked with different organizations there, like Girl Scouts, and did programs that really focused more on the nature writing at that point. And then the art started unfolding over time, where I saw that expressive need for kids to do more art making. And I started Eco Expressions at a time that I was working in environmental education. I did watershed programs for a group called Solana Center. And I found that we did a lot of hands-on environmental ed experiences. Information, was given, but I wasn't sure what they were reflecting on to take home. And I felt like that piece was kind of missing. So that's kind of what inspired me to start Eco Expressions, was to add some kind of reflective component. So it's kind of grown from there. So now we do Wild Fridays, which is nature and art play with kids. It's mostly between the ages of 5 to 11. And then summer camps, Mindfulness Club we started, and then I do nature journaling workshops and retreats for adults. It was really hard to pick pictures because I have so many awesome pictures. These kids are always so photogenic and amazing, but I tried to just include a few that showed different seasons, that the season really isn't a limitation. In the winter, it's morphed to sometimes I try to find an indoor space where we can get in to do some of the art making, but all of the outdoor play still can happen, but it definitely can be a little bit of a limitation when it's super cold. But these are some kids. I just need to move some things around here. These are some kids from Wild Fridays, and we include art making, like painting and drawing. Oops. Nature journaling is a big component. Oops, sorry. I'm trying to get rid of the speaker box. There we go. There we go. Nature journaling is a big component. And when I started the program, I put together what essentially is my own curriculum as the Nature Writing Field Guide for Teachers. So this was back in 2008. And then recently I've added some poetry. Every time I try to start with a reading or a poem that's very seasonal. So depending on the age that I'm working with, we usually start with some kind of reading that gets us grounded in either the space or the season, or even the thinking, whether it's about creativity or different positive elements that we focus on. So here's an example of a nature journaling prompt that's from the Nature Writing Field Guide for Teachers. And it's one that I use a lot. It's a sensory scavenger hunt. And at first, kids are usually, they want to pick things, right? Like we want to pick different flowers or leaves. But in this version, they always have a nature journal that they're working with. And they always have some kind of art material, whether we're using colored pencils or paints. And they are assigned either groups or individual, depending on the size. And it's really about connecting with what space they're in. So are they looking at textures of birch bark or flower arrangements or symmetry of the petals? Or is it sounds because we're in a forest and they can really hear different bird sounds? So it really depends on the space that we're in, but they journal and they draw about what they find. So the emphasis is always on expressive rather than like from an art class point of view. It's very much connecting individually with wildlife, with nature, and essentially with themselves is what happens over time. this is a few more images of kids in action. So you'll see from nature journals again. Sometimes I think nature journaling, and I can show you some samples afterwards, like that you see in published books, it looks so beautiful because these folks are artists, right? And their artwork is beautiful. And I feel like it actually can be a limitation for kids. So I actually don't show a lot of those examples because then they feel like, well, my art's not that beautiful. But that's not the purpose of what we're doing here. And I think that's not really the purpose of connecting with nature. So here they always have a prompt. So it's not just, okay, draw something. There's a guided prompt, but then there's always space for them to create based on how their perspective. So here you can see even in the winter, the one on the right, where there's snow, they take their gloves off for a minute, maybe, depending on the temperature, and we're still drawing and documenting things they see, making observations. And then with my college students, I've started adding more. This is the Intro to Environmental Studies class. It's ENV 101 at UWL in La Crosse. And they've really resonated with doing the nature journaling. So I've started adding more. So this is them outside at Myrick Park in La Crosse. Some background about expressive arts, in case folks aren't too familiar. It's different than, there's like a whole field called art therapy, which is more, you study a certain field, like maybe painting, and then everything is around that one element. With expressive arts, and I put a couple links in just to give some background, that it's about the creative process and it's promoting emotional growth and healing. So expressive arts, I don't do it in a therapeutic way. I'm not certified. I have taken some expressive arts therapy classes, and that's kind of what introduced me to some ideas around self-expression. And, you know, folks really, sometimes they can initiate change through making art. Now I got to get back to the. So I just pulled a few here. Again, this is about creative expression and folks kind of exploring in their own way. Mostly I put these links in here for you to go back and check out. This last one is the organization that does International Expressive Arts Therapy. So if you're wanting to find out more about what that is, there's a few things there. The gist of it is the variety of art mediums and focusing on fostering connection to nature and exploration of self. That's the real key part. Here's some nature art activities that we've done. We started a mindfulness club through Holman Parks and Rec the last couple of years, and it's been really fun. And the kids have been amazing. I always work with small groups. You'll see the most I've ever tried to do in recent years is like 10, 11 kids, but usually the 5 to 8 is a great number because they get real hands-on, they can settle in. I always find in large groups of kids, they just are unsettled. There's a lot more management of kind of manicness, but kids seem to settle in when they're in these nice small groups. So I like that size. And then Wild Friday, we go to a variety of habitats over the course of a season. So I try to sprinkle in forest, waterways. We go up to the bluffs in La Crosse. So a variety of habitats. And again, here they bring their backpacks and they have all their items in their backpack each week. Here's a mandala art. Sometimes I frame it as just nature art. Sometimes we do a bit more about mandalas, and I listed a few books on there. I don't get a lot into the spirituality of mandalas, which can be used, but it's more about creative meditation. It's usually like a quiet space that they, a tool to settle into for quiet space and to connect. And kids love building. So collecting the materials, just the action of collecting materials and then building with them, I find nature art is always a hit. And again, I've done this with the young ones and with my college students. Sometimes we focus on key things like symmetry. Sometimes they'll create an intention of a positive attribute. And generally, I like to have the kids, after they build, they then try to do a drawing or painting of their image, which is really fun. And we talk about the temporariness of nature art, that it doesn't last forever, you know, that the weather is going to have some impact on it. And that's really part of our learning too. So here's some that I did with my UWL students this fall. They did an amazing job putting these together. And then their artwork about the creations was really surprised me. It was really lovely. And so I have them work in groups, and so they collect the materials. Fall is a great time because there's so much leaves and berries and dried seeds to work with. This was at Myrick Park in La Crosse. And so a little about healing spaces. This is a quote from Amos Clifford's Your Guide to Forest Bathing. And he says, when the forest is allowed its place within you, it supports your body's natural capacity for wellness and healing. And I put on here, again, a few key resources that I thought connected to different types of sources of how nature improves mental, physical, and emotional health, which I'm sure many of you are already aware of, but sometimes we want some sources at our fingertips. So I put a few in here. That's psychology journals, Mother Earth Living. One is a UMN article. So you can see that these are fairly recent, but the concept itself is not recent, but I think it's growing in recent years in terms of those connections. And then as part of that, I've started adding more forest bathing to my classes. And forest bathing, also if you're not familiar, so this again is cited from Your Guide to Forest Bathing. I put together a basically a summary of his books and his activities for the Wisconsin EE, if anyone's familiar with the Wisconsin Environmental Education, and I use it in my own classes. And he says, forest bathing is not the same as hiking. The destination is here, not there. The pace is slow. The focus is on connection and relationship. And I think that's the key thing of all of these activities, that it makes it a little different than like if you go to a naturalist at a park where it's information about what's there, like what bird species, you know, what tree species. This is more of a connecting, often stress relieving space, building relationship with nature, but also with who they're with in the group is really powerful. And here is an activity that, again, this is from Amos Clifford's book, A Sensory Experience. And I've done this one a lot where folks might explore a space, and I usually say choose a tree that's you're resonating with. And outside I see and inside I feel. So they might go up and touch a tree or observe it and make an observation and either say how the texture of it feels or something they see or notice. So I'll kind of switch up what senses they're looking at that time to be in touch with those different senses and actually apply them to ourselves too. I included at the bottom, there's a recent article, see if I can pull this up. At UWL, there's the recreation department has an entire forest bathing class now. And let me try that again. There we go. So Shinrin Yoku is the technical name for forest bathing. And just going to scroll down. If anyone's familiar with Namyun Kil is the assistant professor. He teaches forest bathing there, and he got certified as a forest bathing. There's a whole term for it that Amos Clifford started this organization, and he's certified in forest bathing, and so he leads forest bathing hikes. So if folks are interested in that, he's a great resource too. And then here I wanted to just connect with thinking about nature as a healing space. And so some of these are terms that the concept of healing spaces is something we're seeing more indoors, where the folks are creating, like say in a hospital setting, there's a whole field around creating environmental design more inside. That's a healing space, which I think is really neat. Here is focused on K through 12 and connecting to the space that they have. This is what I did a lot in San Diego, where there wasn't as much green space near schools. And so there might be like one tree or maybe a small garden and a compost, and that would be our focused area. But the place-based learning movement is really big too, of how do we use the spaces that we have at schools or organizations and really learn what's in our backyard kind of thing, so that folks can connect to what they have is really powerful. Last one here is from the Atlantic. And it connects to, I think, the bigger picture of Park RX about doctors prescribing time outdoors. So I thought that might be a useful article there. So I wanted to leave us time for questions, and we also could play around with trying one of the journal prompts if folks want. So first I thought I would kind of field questions. And I think I should go back to seeing everyone's face. Let me figure out the technology of that here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Jen. Please, if you have any questions, please send them to the chat room or open your microphone to ask you, Dr. Jen.
Okay, I think I'm back to the big screen where I can see everyone now.
Sarah, did you have a question? And Jan, I think you're going to have to mute while others are asking the question because we're getting a little feedback.
Okay. Let me figure out how to close this chat. Sorry. Let's see.
There we go. So yeah, I was just going to ask more on the working with college students line, because I know there's I think a few college faculty on this call today, and there was a bunch that were copied on it. Just curious, like what advice you would have for folks at the college level, instructors that might be interested in, like, you know, trying some of these activities in their classroom. You know, how to get started on that, and like what kind of impact or response are you seeing with the students? Because you said that they, they were really participating and kind of excited about it. Mental health wise, have any of the students like commented that it's really helped them, calm down or feel some sense of peace or relaxation?
Yes, absolutely. And not just myself, but others in my department and the other departments have noticed how much students are struggling with mental health. And I see it all the time in their journals because they have prompts that are usually relating their own selves to an activity that week. And folks are really stressed and feel just very stressed by, I think, college and a lot of other components going on. And so I've been glad to see that the activities really are stress relievers. So for example, I started a separate assignment, which isn't in here, but it's outdoor personal reflection each week. So each week, I literally assign them to go outside for a half an hour to an hour. They often go more. But one day a week they get out and they can do something as simple as sitting under a tree or sitting by the river. Like I ask them to make it as simple as possible and not go mountain biking or, skiing, or if they do, they have to take a break from that for the reflection part. And they're saying so much, how much that time that they don't make for themselves, which I think is a lot like us as adults of making that time too, how much it feels good to them, and it feels like a stress reliever and relaxation. And am I answering the question? I got off on a tangent.
Yeah, for sure. And then also just speaking to like other college faculty, how they could try to do some of these things in their courses that they offer too.
Yeah, I think having that space, I've had students thank me for giving them the space to express. Like one week might be gratitude journal, for example, and folks were really enjoying even a gratitude journal, which isn't so much being outdoors, but it was a space to kind of explore what's going on for them, and in a positive way too. So I would be happy to help give specific ideas too. Like I have a whole handout on forest bathing. That's a very simple handout I'd be happy to share, or the nature art activities, kind of how those unfold. I crafted into, like, say we do field trips. So this class, they pay a fee to have speakers and field trips and materials. So it's kind of a treasure in that way of I can take them on field trips, but a lot of them are walking field trips. So you do not have to get to the wilderness, but somewhere where they can get away from campus a little bit is really nice. If there's a trail nearby, I definitely recommend that, so that they can disconnect mentally too. And then I kind of fold in nature journaling as a field trip. So they are going to do some form of nature journaling, and I have prompts for that. And then nature art is a separate day. So it's kind of separate activities. I hope that's helping.
Yeah, I have one more thing to add to that, and then I'll be quiet and let other people talk. But do you think that like your university that you work for would ever explore like the idea of all incoming freshmen get some sort of experience like that, so that they can be equipped with skills right at the beginning of their college experience that they can use throughout the rest of their lives to help, deal with that stress and anxiety?
I think that would be amazing. I don't know of anything personally that's happening. The closest I know is the first year seminar is a required class of all freshmen now, but instructors can teach it in different ways. So my focus for spring, again, is mindfulness in nature, and I'm seeing folks really interested in that. So the activities, again, are very similar. And it's also some more meditation practices that go with that. but I haven't seen something across the board, but I might just not be familiar. There's a lot of resources that we send them to, like the counseling center has resources, but I haven't seen something required. It's kind of like what we see with EE and K-12, right? It's required. It's supposed to be a standard, but I don't know as it's always covered in depth from my experience. Yeah.
Jan, this is Mary. Hi. I'm just wondering if when you present this to schools, K-12 particularly, are they open to it, uninformed, or resistant? And are you seeing any change in how people view this as an opportunity for students?
That's a great question. I don't work with school districts as much currently as I have in the past. When I started 20 years ago, I naively thought school districts would be like, of course, would love to have you come do an after-school program. And even out west, I found that was not the case. They were very scared by things like, and again, the meditation practices we were doing even back then, it was, you know, nature art making. It wasn't like I was teaching them Buddhism or, you know, so, but it felt very threatening. And it was very challenging. So I think what I've done since then is more working. I've worked with a lot of homeschool families. I've worked with after school or summer camp when kids are off. I've done presentations for some schools like Summit Elementary in La Crosse, which is an environmental charter school. I've done trainings with the teachers to use nature writing and nature journaling, for example. And those schools that reach out to me are very receptive because obviously the administrator supports it and wants to bring it in. So those have been positive, but mostly my work is through organizations, outdoor organizations, youth organizations as the partners. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I am curious about folks. Oh, I see Nicole has her hand raised. Sorry. Nicole.
I'm trying to unmute there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Jan. So I was curious if you could go into the aspect of nature art as a healing tool, the healing aspect a little bit more. For example, if you have any stories about, you know, particular people who really showed dramatic change in, you know, their personal aspect following some exposure to this type of immersion in nature. I would be very interested to hear some of that.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I started out, I worked more with like rehab, teens in recovery. And so there was a lot of addictions at play. And I remember some strong moments there with, for example, I remember one of the first activities, it was around Christmas time, we were outdoors, it was in Idaho, and I had them drawing trees outside. So they were sketching a tree and then they were telling a fictional story about the tree. And they had to make a connection to their family, for example. And I was getting at some root things here because I knew there were things going on with these teens in recovery. And one student drew and described a story of the tree. It was just filled with like beer and liquor bottles, and described the connection to his family, and it was so powerful. And so those same kind of students might not feel safe in nature. That's another thing that happens if you work with people who are really in trauma. They don't necessarily feel safe. It feels very foreign. So it's very much about creating a safe space for them, I think, emotionally, before they can even connect. And so they would start to love being outside, and I would see the changes of the curiosity too. You see a lot of teens who kind of shut down for safety, and then they start to be a little more comfortable with themselves. You know, I think it goes hand in hand, comfortable with their own bodies and with themselves and with the nature space. But I don't have I didn't create extensive documentation of that, and I kind of wish I had. So that, you know, from my own experience, yeah. And I see it in small ways now, where it doesn't have to be people in trauma, or you know, to see those changes too. And I see it with young kids who, you know, if they are into game, you know, my son is into video games too, but you start to see the changes that happen of not wanting to play outside as much. And so getting them outside and then seeing that connection happen again is really powerful. And the same goes with the art making, where I have a lot of kids who feel some perfectionist feelings around art, and therefore it feels like a barrier to want to draw or paint. And I think with this expressive style, that's why I love it so much, is it helps them. I've seen growth where then it's not so scary to do it, right? And then they're actually having fun, whereas at first it could be kind of a struggle. Yeah. Thank you. I was going to ask what folks would use this for. Like, are you working with, you know, because I think there's a background here that's a variety of backgrounds. Are folks working in more healthcare or therapeutic, or I would be curious if folks wanted to share that, of how you could see it being utilized in your own way, or.
Helen, can you try that question?
Did you say me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
try.
I can be the first one to go. Everybody always kind of waits to see who's gonna go where. You know, I think these, you know, you talk about, you know, the difference between a naturalist doing these kind of programs and the type of work that you're doing. And I think it'd be interesting to try and figure out, you know, better ways for us to be able, as the parks departments with our naturalists, to be able to figure out how to do more programming like this as well. I think it's, I think there's a way to maybe transition it over, or maybe trying to collaborate a little more often with folks like you to come in and do programs at our various parks and kind of just help promote those programming. So I think there's definitely options from the parks perspective to try and implement this more, whether it's with our own naturalists or bringing in programs. I mean, we're trying to branch out a little bit more and do more collaborative work in the parks, so that it's not just the naturalists always doing the programming, that we're really trying to pull from the community and pull in different areas to try and bring in new ideas, because we can't be the expert on everything. So we can be the experts on the things that we know and do well, and then we really need to start learning to rely on outside sources, such as Jan, to come in and kind of help with some of our programming. So that's kind of where I would see the use in our Olmsted County parks. But I think it's something we definitely need to keep pushing and keep opening the doors to, this nature as the healing for both kids and adults. So I think it's a fantastic direction that you're going.
Oh, I see. Dr. Lynch. Dr. Lynch, can you add something?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think I work in healthcare, and we just need to find, the right kids and adults who could really benefit and be aware of this programming and get the right people referred, and just understand how to refer and where to refer and where the resources are. I think are really important. This was a great presentation and just so exciting. And I think we're just starting to understand how well nature can help with so many chronic health conditions we see every day in our clinics, including mental health problems, obesity, stress, anxiety. I mean, just there's so many things that this can benefit. So it is great to hear this and know about this. So thanks.
I'm a mental health therapist in the community by Chester Woods. And so I do therapy with nature on a regular basis on our farm. And we have a labyrinth and we do a lot of grounding exercises. But we also take a kind of a multi-systemic approach where we also work on the gut health, the natural ways to also treat people. And we've had huge success rates of people getting off medication with using nature and gut health.
Last summer, this is Mary Wellik. Last summer, Chester Woods offered a volunteer-led mindfulness experience that that was very informative, I thought, and I hope they continue it here because I see a real possibility for connection between something like that and the healthcare providers, knowing that it would be easy to refer people to something that the individual could sign up for, not have to pay a lot of money for, and have an experience in a local park that's not hard to access.
I'm curious, for those who work more in the naturalist field, at the state parks, at the county parks, is there kind of a barrier, I don't know if barrier is the right word, that feels like a limitation of offering things like this? Like, have you come across any backlash from community or just non-receptivity? I wasn't sure.
This is Sarah at Whitewater. So a couple things there. I mean, we've had some conversations about this very recently because really everything we offer has a health benefit to it in our parks, like all of our programming, but we want to try to figure out a way that we could really help providers identify some of those programs that really have a more robust wellness, mindfulness aspect to them. So we were talking about, like, do we need to create some sort of little standards within our state parks, at least, so that our naturalists know, like, when we flag a program on our online calendar, because we can tag with different tags, so you can search specifically by wellness programs if you want to find a wellness themed program. Well, we have certain, like, key criteria that a program needs to meet. So it's different than a fishing program or a regular hike, right? It has this built-in kind of mindfulness aspect to it. And I don't think there's pushback on that. There's a lot of interest, but it's the conversations that we've had some different perspectives, I guess. You can't force people to do this as far as the leaders, right? Like the people leading the program. So where can we cooperate, collaborate to find funding to bring in people like you or people who have the forest bathing certification or, folks that are doing this ecotherapy kind of work. And then how can we support the naturalists that do want to get this training and be able to lead these activities on their own? I think it's going to be kind of a mix of both, options. And so trying to figure out where funding might come from and how we can do this on a more, I guess we're looking at statewide level, and then team up with these healthcare providers so they know that these programs exist and they can start referring folks to them.
I'm a naturalist out at Oxbow, and everybody thinks Oxbow and animals. So even when we offer some programs that are more park related or getting out for a hike or things, we don't always get as many visitors for that because they love to come see all the animals. So we've been trying to introduce more of these, and I think just part of it is people don't always know, like, what's forest bathing? You guys are running around in the woods without your clothes on, and you're trying to explain more of what those are. So we've been trying to offer some of them, and I've had 2 of them, and then it rained on those days, of course, so I had no people for that. But I think on our part, it's just trying to get the word out and offering these for people and making it seem a little less scary, because sometimes if people don't understand exactly what it is, they're not going to come out to the park and realize, oh, this is something that I really enjoy, something that can benefit me. So that's something we're trying to work on, is how we can offer it and get people initially to come out to the park. Because once you get them, a lot of people are interested and want to do more, but it's that first step of getting them out to us and then helping to spread the word with it. So we're getting a new nature center that's supposed to open hopefully this spring. Hopefully that will help draw more people, and that we can kind of build on that and bring more speakers in and more people to help us offer more of a variety of programs too.
Can I add to what Megan just said? Can I add something? Sorry. I've seen the same thing. Like when I call it forest bathing, it's a certain demographic of folks that show up for it, and usually not many men. Because I've had comments from men like, that sounds like something hippies do. And I'm like, so? Maybe the hippies are onto something, right? So trying to find clever ways to adapt these experiences and like advertise the program so that it gets people interested in wanting to come and try it out. Like I've been working with some schools, and I've been calling it a medicine forest walk. And we focus on how nature heals, and like literally it's used as medicine. Like if you go to a pharmacy, where's that stuff coming from, right? But then also bringing in how nature heals us mentally, spiritually as well. So I'm trying to play around with like different ways of framing it and titling it to see if it can attract a more diverse audience of folks.
Yeah, I was going to add in a couple of things. I think the marketing of it, I find, is really key. And I find that when I do have more college age interns, they're very savvy about how to come up with those names better. So that's always a good idea. And I was noticing, like Megan, for example, a lot of folks have come to me saying they wish there was more like art club activities for youth in our community. So I don't know if it's the same there, but I've had a lot of parents saying that. And so I also know kids love drawing animals. So it might be fun to still feed that animal component, but maybe have an art experience. I could see that really playing out at your park.
We do tend to see a lot more programs, or a lot more people showing up to our programs. If it's not animals, they're showing up to the programs that are crafty or art related. And so, but sometimes it's been a little bit more difficult for us to feel like we're tying that back down to some sort of environmental education that we want to throw into it. And maybe we don't always have to do that, but I think this wellness and health in nature is really all you need anymore to just get kids or adults coming in to do these crafty activities at the parks, and be able to really tie the natural benefits back to an educational component of our programs. Because it's, we always like to have some component be educational while they're out there, and it's you're having fun, but we're also going to learn a little bit while we're here. And this just makes it super easy to tie the health and nature benefits into a more craft or art related project that we would do out the parks. So I think we can draw the crowds pretty easily with that type of a program.
I would, if you don't mind, add in there that I think creatively crafty is very different from if you work with loose parts with kids, for example, where they're using what's called loose parts in nature, for example, and they're creating truly from their own form, versus I tend to see crafty things. So that rang a bell for me, as I tend to see organizations host crafty things. Nothing wrong with that, but it's doing a totally different thing than the open, loose parts. Does that make sense? I feel like they're two different avenues of creativity. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's another key component that we could go on is move away from the very structured crafts that we do. And still have those because people do love those. But make sure that we do offer the art and nature kind of stuff where it is just, we're going to go out, we're going to find stuff in nature and we're going to make it into some wonderful little masterpiece that you create, whatever that be.
What a great discussion. Is there any other question or comment? We are a little bit kind of close to the end.
I'm kind of curious, are any of the colleges looking more at ongoing education in this area? Like I have searched out there, for anything at a higher level of education to get, like I would love to see a PhD, but most like homeopathic type degrees are, you have to go on site and it's in another state, which isn't really compatible for a lot of people. So just wondering if any of the colleges are looking at that higher level of degree in this area.
I don't know if I can speak to that too much. I'm not as familiar. I see just connections between like the rec department, kind of between departments is kind of my experience. So I'm not sure. That's a great question though. I wonder who would know more about that. So you're thinking of like PhD homeopathic medicine kind of thing? Is that what?
Yeah, something in that area. The only thing I've seen is like Arizona State University offers a variety, but that's a long ways away. And there's only a few colleges that offer an MD in this area, but I think there's like 4 or 5 where you can then test for your licensure in it. But that is again out of state.
That's a great question, and I'm not sure. I'm afraid to say. Yeah.
Okay, I think we don't have any more question or discussion, I think. So thank you so much, Dr. Jen, for your time and the great information. And I hope everyone learned a lot. We also thank everyone who joined us today. And please, if you are interested in nature and park areas, please feel free to contact us and join us. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Jen.
Thank you all for being here. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.